What if the way you respond in silence says more about you than anything you've ever said? Picture this. A crowded room, voices clashing like thunder. One man stands still. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't defend, doesn't react. His silence cuts sharper than any argument. Everyone senses it. The quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove himself. That man could be you. Or it could be Socrates. Centuries ago, he taught that silence wasn't weakness, it was revelation. In moments of tension, he chose stillness over sound. He knew that words often serve the ego, but silence exposes the truth. Because when you stop talking, when you stop performing, something raw emerges. You start to see who you really are beneath the noise, your fears, your motives, your inner compass. So ask yourself, when you're silent, what do you discover? Is it peace or is it discomfort trying to hide? To understand this, we need to step back to ancient Athens, where Socrates taught through silence as much as speech and revealed the secret rule that still defines character today. Long before psychology, Socrates understood something about silence the modern world still ignores. In the heart of Athens, beneath the sunlit columns of the Agora, a young man named Thrasymachus approached Socrates with fire in his eyes. He was known for his sharp tongue and louder pride, convinced he could outwit the old philosopher. A crowd gathered, expecting another verbal duel. "Tell me, Socrates," the young man said, his voice cutting through the air, "if you are so wise, why do you question everyone instead of speaking truth yourself? Or is it because you have none?" The crowd murmured. Socrates didn't flinch. He didn't answer. He simply smiled. His eyes, calm and kind, met the young man's with quiet curiosity. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The silence grew heavy, uncomfortable, until the young man, unable to bear it, began speaking again. He rambled, justifying, arguing, explaining. His words became tangled, his tone defensive. The crowd's excitement turned into uneasy amusement. And still, Socrates said nothing. When the young man finally stopped, his own breath betrayed exhaustion. Socrates looked at him gently and said only this: "You have spoken much, my friend. Tell me, have you learned anything?" The silence that followed was different this time, not awkward, but awakening. That day, those who watched began to understand that Socrates' power was not in persuasion, but in presence. His silence was not emptiness, it was awareness. Modern science has finally caught up with what Socrates practiced centuries ago. Neuroscientists called it the pause response, the space between stimulus and reaction. In that brief pause, the brain's amygdala, the center for emotional response, quiets down, allowing the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reason and empathy, to take over. In other words, silence literally rewires how we respond to life. This is the foundation of what we now call the Silent Rule framework, a simple but transformative way to master the space between emotion and action. Step 1. Observe your emotions. When tension rises, notice it. Don't label it as good or bad. Just observe. Awareness is the beginning of control. Step 2. Delay your reaction. Give yourself a single breath, one pause, before speaking or deciding. This short delay creates the distance you need for wisdom to appear. Step 3. Ask if your words come from ego or clarity. Before you speak, ask yourself, am I trying to prove something or improve something? The first leads to noise. The second leads to truth. It sounds simple, but practicing it can change everything: your arguments, your leadership, even your peace of mind. Try this once today. Before reacting, count one deep breath. Don't rush to fill the silence. Feel it. Watch how your mind settles. You'll begin to understand what Socrates meant, that the wisest words are often the ones left unsaid. Because in the stillness between emotion and response, something profound happens. Your character steps forward. And that's what Socrates truly wanted his students to discover. Not what to think, but how to be. But Socrates' silence wasn't just self-control. It was a mirror.
Silence doesn't hide your truth. It exposes it. Meet Mark, a 40-year-old executive who built his reputation on confidence and control. In meetings, he was always the loudest voice, sharp, articulate, persuasive. People respected him and secretly feared him. He prided himself on winning every discussion. Until one day, during an executive coaching session, his mentor asked a simple question. "Mark, when was the last time you listened without preparing your next reply?" Mark laughed it off, ready to answer, but the coach stopped him. "Before you speak," he said, "just sit in silence for 2 minutes." 2 minutes. It sounded easy. But the moment the room went quiet, Mark's mind erupted. "What's the point of this? I should say something. I look foolish just sitting here." Then another thought. What if he thinks I don't know? His chest tightened, his hands fidgeted. The silence, meant to be peaceful, felt suffocating. But as the seconds stretched, something shifted. He started noticing his racing thoughts, how each one screamed to defend, to prove, to protect. And beneath all that noise, a quieter truth emerged. His identity was built not on understanding, but on being right. In that moment, Mark realized something profound. His silence wasn't empty, it was a mirror. Modern psychology confirms what Mark experienced. Studies on self-perception bias show that most people overestimate their self-awareness. We think we know who we are, but in reality, we only see ourselves through constant activity, speaking, reacting, asserting. Yet neuroscience suggests that when the brain enters moments of stillness, the default mode network activates, the region responsible for introspection and moral reasoning. In silence, we finally access deeper layers of understanding that endless talking hides. Socrates understood this long before science did. His silence wasn't withdrawal, it was inquiry. He created space for people to meet their unfiltered selves. Because silence doesn't flatter your ego, it confronts it. That's why I call this part of his teaching the 3 mirrors of silence, reflections that reveal who you truly are when words fall away. Mirror 1, it shows what you fear losing. When you stop talking, what makes you restless? Approval? Control? Recognition? What you fear in silence often reveals what secretly controls you. Mirror 2, it reveals your internal noise. In the quiet, every hidden insecurity comes knocking. That's not weakness, it's opportunity. The more you listen to your mental chatter, the more you understand where it comes from. Mirror 3, it reflects your truest intent. When the noise fades, what remains? Resentment or compassion? Judgment or understanding? That final tone in your silence is your real voice. Silence, then, becomes more than absence. It's an X-ray of the soul. It strips away performance and exposes motive. It doesn't ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be honest. Mark began practicing this in every meeting. Before replying, he'd take one slow breath. Sometimes he still felt the old tension rise, the urge to dominate. But now he recognized it, and that recognition alone changed how he led. People began listening to him because he first listened for them. Observe your next silence. What surfaces first, peace or panic? That first feeling is the beginning of self-knowledge. And this is where the silent rule becomes more than reflection, it becomes transformation. Silence is not absence, it's presence multiplied. Meet Ethan, a husband and father in his late 30s. Intelligent, kind, but quick to react. Every disagreement with his wife, no matter how small, turned into an argument. Not because he wanted to hurt her, but because he couldn't stand being misunderstood. He believed that explaining louder meant being heard better. One evening, they sat at the kitchen table. The air was heavy, a familiar argument about responsibility and time. His wife's voice trembled with frustration. Ethan felt the usual heat rising in his chest, the urge to defend himself, to make his point, to win. But that night, something stopped him. He remembered a line he read about Socrates. The one who knows does not need to shout. So he did something strange. He stayed silent. He took one slow breath, listened, watched. His wife's anger began to soften, not because he said the right words, but because he didn't. The silence gave her space to release her pain without resistance. When she finally finished speaking, she looked at him, expecting the usual rebuttal, and found only quiet understanding. The tension dissolved. For the first time, they weren't opponents. They were partners again.
Modern science explains why this works. Neuroscientists have discovered that our brains are wired with mirror neurons, cells that reflect the emotions we observe in others. When someone stays calm and grounded, these neurons help regulate the emotional state of those around them. In simple terms, calm is contagious. This means silence, when rooted in presence, doesn't disconnect you from others. It invites them into your peace. This is the essence of what I call the silence as strength model, the practical way to live Socrates' silent rule in modern life. Before reacting, pause. That small gap anchors you in awareness. You stop being the storm. You become the eye of it. Listen not to reply, but to understand. True listening dissolves judgment. It's the purest form of respect. When you finally speak, let your words rise from calm, not chaos. Intentional speech has power precisely because it's rare. Socrates once said that the unexamined life is not worth living. Silence is the examination. It's how we measure the space between who we are and who we could be. In a world addicted to noise, silence is rebellion. It's how you reclaim your soul. When everyone else rushes to post, argue, react, you pause. You breathe. You choose awareness over impulse. And that choice changes everything. Not just in your relationships, but in your leadership, your parenting, your sense of peace. Ethan didn't become silent in every situation. He became selectively silent. He learned when to speak and when to stay still. He noticed that his calm began to influence his team at work, his children at home. The world around him responded differently, not because it changed, but because he did. Before your next big reaction, pause. Watch how the world changes. And when you start living this way, something beautiful happens. The loudest truth is spoken in silence. In a world obsessed with volume, louder voices, stronger opinions, constant noise, silence has become the rarest form of strength. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it doesn't chase validation. It simply is. Silence reveals your maturity, not your weakness. Because when you no longer need to prove yourself, you've already won the battle within. That's the quiet confidence Socrates lived by. Not the confidence of being right, but the peace of being real. His wisdom was never about having the perfect answer. It was about creating the space where truth could surface on its own. And that's what the Silent Rule teaches us. The moment you stop reacting, the truth finally has room to breathe. Remember the man in the opening scene, standing still amid chaos, saying nothing while others argued? Back then, he seemed detached. But now we understand. He wasn't avoiding the fight. He was mastering himself. And maybe that's the ultimate form of wisdom. Knowing that silence doesn't hide the truth, it reveals it. So the next time you feel the urge to defend, to correct, to prove, pause, breathe, listen. Let silence do the talking, because in that pause, you meet the real you. Socrates once said, "Be as you wish to seem." And maybe, just maybe, who you truly are is revealed not in the words you speak, but in the silence you choose.